titles starting with the letter K to O. Knock on wood. Ivory-billed woodpeckers disappeared in 1944, and biologists thought they were extinct because so many of the forests where they had lived have been logged away. But after several sightings in 2004, scientists now believe the bird isn't extinct after all.
George Inness loved nature and wanted to show its hidden spirit in landscapes like Pool in the Woods, which he painted in 1886. Even though they're called mountains, the Ozark Mountains are really a dissected plateau. The area used to be one big flat highland that was eroded by rivers and creeks to create the jagged mountain-like formation.
They may not fly south for the winter, but rattlesnakes migrate every year too. Rattlesnakes travel up to a few miles to return to their den each winter, where they hibernate until the warm weather returns in spring. George Inness became known as the best landscape artist in America in the 1800s. Before he studied painting, he earned money as a teenager by engraving maps.
Just because an alligator has its mouth open doesn't mean it's hungry or looking to bite. Alligators can cool off or heat up their body by letting in air through their mouth. Can a forest grow underwater? Yes! Swamps are actually wetlands that are full of woody trees and other vegetation, both above and below the surface. They're also home to lots of animals like crayfish, alligators, frogs, and birds.
Johann Sebastian Bach wrote his famous Orchestral Suite, number 2 in B minor, in 1721. A year before, he published a book of his keyboard music called The Well-Tempered Clavier. The Legend of the Golden Pyramid.
The first hieroglyphics weren't written down in a notebook or on a piece of paper. They were actually carved onto the sides of buildings and structures.
Even though Johannes Brahms was from Germany, he loved the music of Hungarian gypsies, and he used their melodies as inspiration for his famous Hungarian dance series. The English alphabet has 26 letters to get to know, but students learning hieroglyphics had to learn more than 700 letters. Each letter was actually a small picture which stood for a word or an idea.
Johannes Brahms liked Hungarian dances so much that he wrote 21 of them, each between 1 and 4 minutes long. Hungarian dance number 5 in G minor is the most famous of the 21 dances.
The body of an ancient sphinx is always that of a lion sitting down, but the heads are of different animals, like rams or birds. The Great Sphinx of Giza is the most famous sphinx, and it has the head of a human being on top of the lion's body. The Nile River is the longest river in the world, and if it were in the United States, it could flow all the way from the west coast to the east coast and still have room to spare.
The harp has been around for thousands of years. making it the oldest string instrument there is. In fact, rock paintings in France that are more than 17,000 years old show an instrument that looks like a harp.
That.
The Great Golden Pyramid isn't just the largest pyramid, it's also among the oldest. In fact, the Golden Pyramid is the only one of the 7 ancient wonders that is still standing.
A Little Einstein's Halloween. September by the Lambour Brothers is an illustration from a calendar book called the Book of Hours. Today, the Book of Hours is one of the most valuable books in the whole world. Because of the huge number of piano compositions Edvard Grieg wrote, he was given the nickname Chopin of the North. Because of the huge number of piano compositions Edvard Grieg wrote, he was given the nickname Chopin of the North.
Irma, Paul, and Johann de Lambour were experts at painting in miniature. Their painting, September, measures only 8 inches by 8 inches. That's smaller than a piece of construction paper. Composer Edvard Grieg was born in Norway in 1843, the same year that Charles Dickens published his famous play, A Christmas Carol. If you think you've seen the Neuschwanstein Castle before, you're probably right. Walt Disney used the beautiful German castle as the inspiration for Sleeping Beauty's castle at Disneyland.
Medieval castles, built of stone and wood, were everywhere in Europe during the Middle Ages. Kings and lords built castles to house their families and protect the people who lived in their kingdoms. Buckingham Palace used to be called Buckingham House. It was just a large townhouse in London until King George bought it in 1703. Today, Buckingham Palace has over 600 rooms.
The Palace of Versailles is a royal chateau outside of Paris. The Hall of Mirrors is the most famous room in the palace, and inside you'll find more than 350 huge mirrors hung around the room. The Missing Invitation. If you live in New York City and want to leave the country, just walk over to the United Nations. Even though the UN building is in America, it is considered international territory. It even has its own fire department and postal service. Monarch butterflies beat their wings really slowly compared to most other flies, only 5 to 20 times each second. But just because they flap their wings slowly doesn't mean they don't get far. Monarch butterflies fly thousands of miles in only a few months when they migrate.
The world first heard Ludwig van Beethoven's famous composition, Ode to Joy, in 1824, the same year that John Quincy Adams was elected president of the United States. That.
Oklahoma has a lot of big caves, but the longest cave in the world is actually in Kentucky. Mammoth Cave has more than 360 miles of underground passages.
It's no wonder the tree branches in Angangueo, Mexico, sag from the weight of the monarchs resting on them. More than 100 million butterflies make the quaint mountain town their winter home. force of the water rushing down Niagara Falls is so strong that it's used to create power through hydroelectricity. But all that water was actually stopped in 1969 by a temporary dam so researchers could study rocks at the top of the falls.
Back. Navajo women have been weaving blankets and rugs in unique designs since the 1800s. They traditionally wove them to trade at trading posts.
Claude Monet isn't the only artist with a painting called Young Woman in Garden. French Impressionist Edouard Manet painted a painting with the same name in 1880. The Mouse and the Moon.
The Matterhorn in Switzerland is one of the most famous mountains in the world. It is especially hard to climb because of its steep rock faces and the unexpected snowstorms that can appear on the mountaintop.
A gondola is a cable car or lift that hangs high above the ground and carries people up and down the side of a mountain. But it can also mean a boat that's used in the water canals of Venice, Italy.
If you ever travel to the moon, don't worry about packing your raincoat and umbrella. There is no weather on the moon because it has no atmosphere. That means no rain, no snow, not even any wind.
Back. The word nightingale means singer of the night. The song nightingales sing is so beautiful that poets have written about it.
Owls might not make the same facial expressions as we do, but you can still tell what they're feeling by looking at them. A curious owl bobs its head up and down. A scared owl pulls in his feathers, and a relaxed owl will let his feathers all hang out.
The earliest mosaics were made in ancient Greece thousands of years ago as decoration for the inside of houses and buildings. The Greeks used small pebbles to make art of people or animals. Ancient Roman mosaics were created more than 4,000 years ago. Many of the Roman mosaics decorated the floors of villas and were made out of pieces of marble, stone, or pottery.
Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart finished his musical masterpiece Eine kleine Nachtmusik in 1787, the same year that the Constitution of the United States was written. Back. The Northern Nightlight.
It's freezing in the Arctic during the winter, but animals who live there have special tools to keep them warm. Arctic foxes have small and round ears, so they don't lose any extra body heat, and their short, bushy tails keep them warm on the ice.
If you think winter is long where you live, try living in the Arctic tundra. Once October rolls around, the tundra won't see sunlight again until early March.
Reindeer shed their heavy fur coats every year, but that's not the only thing they lose. Reindeer have large antlers that fall off each winter, and they grow new ones every spring.
Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov's song, The Flight of the Bumblebee, was written for a Russian opera called The Tale of Tsar Sultan. It tells the story of a prince who becomes a bumblebee so he can visit his father without being seen.
Like many polar animals, the coat of a snowy owl changes color from brown in the warm months to white in the winter, so the owl can blend in with the snow and stay out of sight of the predator.
The farmhouse Claude Monet painted in Road from Saint-Simeon belonged to another artist, Eugene Bourdon. Monet, Bourdon, and other famous artists spent time living and painting together at the farmhouse in Normandy. Claude Monet loved to see how the different lighting changed the way the subjects in his paintings looked. So he would paint the same scene over and over again at different times of the day or year.
Even though he loved music, Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov gave up his dream of composing when he was 18 years old and sailed around the world with the Russian Navy. But even though there were no instruments on board, Nikolai composed part of a symphony while living on the ship.
Oh yes, it's springtime.
We might put on more layers in autumn, but many trees shed their leaves when the weather gets colder. Leaves lose their green color and fall off the trees in the fall because the days are shorter and they don't get as much energy from the sun. Antonio Vivaldi's dad was a professional violinist. Maybe that's why he wrote his famous concertos, The Four Seasons, to be played on the violin. Today, The Four Seasons is one of the most popular pieces of classical music.
Windmills were invented more than 1,000 years ago. Back then, they were used to grind up grains and pump water. Today, they're called wind turbines, and they can make electricity. Even though Holland is famous for its tulip fields, they were first brought to Holland by the Turkish in the 1600s. Back then, some types of tulip bulbs were so rare and valuable that they were worth more than a house.
France's king, Louis XV, loved Antonio Vivaldi's composition, Spring from the Four Seasons. And since he was the king, he could hear it any time he wanted. All he had to do was order the song to be performed. That.
Japanese artist Utagawa Hiroshige was a ukiyo-e master. Ukiyo-e means pictures of the floating world, and it's a special kind of Japanese art. Utagawa Hiroshige carved the image from mountains and river of Kiso into a block of wood and then made a print from the wood block. Hiroshige made more than 5,000 prints from his different wood blocks.
Before lighthouses were built to warn ships sailing at night of rocks and shoals in the water, people lit fires along the top of cliffs to help boats see the shore.